What's up, nerds? Welcome back to another very special episode of Region Free. Maybe more special than any episode we've done so far. And you know why? Blake Hester, the co-host of this podcast. I'm AJ Moser, talking to Blake Hester, talking to you, the audience.
What movie are we watching?
Well, we already watched it, I hope. Today, we're talking about the movie we watched, RIKI-OH, the story of Ricky.
Here's the thing. Motherfuckers always complain about One Punch Man Season 2, but I watched it last night and it seems great.
You watched the One Punch Man Season 2?
The joke is, RIKI-OH, he kills a lot of his opponents with one punch, similar to One Punch Man.
Barely even what I've
been led to believe on YouTube is the height of media criticism is just comparing one thing to another and calling it a day.
Okay, thanks for tuning into Region Free this week. We've compared RIKI-OH to one thing. In and out under 80 seconds. That's peak media criticism. No. Shit. The reason this episode's so special, in my estimation, this feels like one of the movies that we sort of have designed the ethos of this podcast around. RIKI-OH, the story of Ricky, was distributed by Golden Harvest in the United States, was notoriously kind of hard to find for a very long time. Recently,
even
today, as one of our hosts learned, was recently redistributed in a beautiful Blu-ray edition by the boutique Tokyo Shock.
I thought it was 88 Films.
Maybe it was a collaboration or something.
They might have both done it over the years. I think 88 had the most recent one.
Yeah, Tokyo Shock was the first DVD distribution. You're correct there. But kind of a notorious cult film with what some might call over-the-top violence and some gratuitous gore.
I feel like it's one of the kind of entry-level like East Asian cult film, ultra gory, Ichi being another one, Old Boy to some degree, Big Man Japan, though I don't remember if that's particular gory or not, Tokyo Gore Police, like there's a handful of them, and Ricky occupies a similar space as all those films. Yeah,
absolutely. Kind of another early example of Category 3 films, which we've talked about a little bit, the sort of...
That's right.
What's the word? Harshest rating you can get as a film coming out of...
the equivalent of like NC-17 or X over here.
Maybe Ty West is going to do a remake of RIKI-OH, Story of Ricky.
You know, there's a pretty good documentary about Cat 3, which is like, even though it's a rating, it's kind of just a genre in and of itself now.
Well, totally.
Especially because we don't get as many anymore, so it's kind of like insulated. Is that the right word? Insulated?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a good documentary about it that comes with the unearthed copy re-release of The Untold Story, which is a fantastic Cat 3 film. I just recommend seeking out, but it also comes with that documentary that goes into the history of like RIKI-OH, Men Behind the Sun, all the Herman Yao stuff. It's really cool. Some wild stuff was going on.
Yeah. I mean, I almost want to start with the history of the film because a lot of it is so fascinating. Particularly in the case of Fan-Su Wong, who plays the lead character, Mr. Ricky himself, or kind of if you're watching the original Cantonese version, his character's name is Lick Wong, but the American version gets the beautifully translated Ricky Wong, I think maybe.
Also, so I watched the dubbed version of this because I couldn't find it streaming anywhere except for maybe an Egyptian equivalent to YouTube.
It was like fully Arabic,
yeah, which had the dubbed version where they call him RIKI-OH. Now is it my ignorance to think is pronounced O, or would that actually be pronounced Ho? Because they just call him RIKI-OH.
Part of that is the bastardization of the dub, which is pretty notorious for being...
I thought it was fun.
I kind of really liked the English dub version. Like, it's just one of those things that's people sort of hold up as like this is just what they were doing around this time, because this movie comes out in Asia in 91 or 92. And then makes its way over to the United States a couple of years later, just for freaks like us. It was like, oh, these perverts are gonna buy that DVD. They love these martial arts films where eyes are popping out of sockets, blood and guts are poking out of people's chests all the time. They're gonna dig this shit. And so to do so, basically, you just get a couple of American actors to watch the movie very closely and dub over the original dialogue. And yeah, the dub is like makes this movie funnier kind of than it already is. I think a lot of this movie is over the top and gratuitous in a way that is extreme that I find funny. It's hard to tell if that's like, you know, the filmmaker's direct intention. With a film like this, it's not particularly hard when you have someone, you know, pulling out their intestines and wrapping them around someone to be like, I think that maybe was intended a little bit as a joke.
Yeah.
But the English dubbing just takes the viewing experience to another level to be like, this is an out and out comedy.
There is one moment in the dub that is, I'd wager comedy gold, because I can't, it's been about a decade since I had watched this movie originally in its native language. But I don't think this would have been the case. There is a point where a guy is peeing and idly singing, and the song he sings is the Rolling Stones, Can't Get No Satisfaction, in the dub. And I'm like, that's a wild pick for this dub.
Maybe that's why this movie is so hard to find, because of the licensing issues.
Copyright.
Yeah, they were like, he sounds exactly like Mr. Jagger himself.
That's right. It's a very funny moment. Loved it.
Yeah. Well, the point I was trying to make initially, or just a little anecdote I wanted to tell, this is based on a popular manga series in Japan, also called RIKI-OH, that probably, you know, runs much longer. I haven't read any of it. I'm assuming it kind of extends past this arc. I know that they did eventually make a sequel to this film that is sort of disowned and not as beloved as this one. But yeah, the main actor was basically coming up as like a dancer or martial artist, like, you know, a guy who sort of performs in China, and basically like gets approached to like, hey, want to come be in a kung fu movie? So flies over to Japan, and I watched, there was a featurette on the Blu-ray that I was talking about. The way he tells it, basically, the plane lands, they hand him the script, they're like, want to be RIKI-OH in the RIKI-OH movie? And he's like, I guess so. And then, you know, the rest is history.
Oh, they shot this in Japan?
I believe so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the production of this at all. Like, it's just a film that has occupied a little corner of my brain for the past 10, 12 years, and have never really looked into it beyond just like, that's a crazy movie.
Some of the best, or at least most memorable kind of gore you can get in a film. I think that's what anyone who watches this movie walks away remembering.
It's easy to watch this movie, AJ, and think, wow, that's a goofy, stupid film. But I would like to posit this idea.
Posit.
A masterclass in film pacing.
Yeah.
About 2 minutes of setup, and then it gets out of its way, and it's like, we all know why we're here, and here's 90 minutes of fucking blood and guts.
Yeah, it does make a quick little detour for some flashbacks and some backstory filling in, but for the most part, yeah, this movie is like, hey, here's a bad guy. They've crossed Ricky in some way. Time to watch them die in a elaborately comical fashion. In
a way that feels like manga. That's the great thing about this movie, I think, is like, it's the same with like Ichi. And granted, there's so many manga adaptations. I mean, even Old Boy is a manga adaptation. But like, there's very few that feel like they meet in the middle in the right way of being live action while also an adaptation of manga. Usually they just go too far in trying to make it like a cartoon. You know, yeah. I think about like maybe the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure movies by Miike, I think, are pretty.
I'm not going to speak from a point of authority on the live action JoJo movies as if I've seen them, but I kind of I'm picking up what you're putting down.
But you know what I mean? Like Ichi and this, they both work as live action films, as dramas in their own right, but know when to kind of go pedal to the fucking metal and be like, here's a very goofy, outlandish moment.
Yeah,
like a man pulling his large intestine out and strangling a character with it.
The superstructure of this film is also rather video gamey in that it's just kind of a bunch of levels with boss characters, some like, you know, some mobs you take care of really quickly. But this movie is really, you know, sort of structured in a way like it's just an elaborate tournament or like a kind of boss gauntlet because you're introduced to like, again, just this escalating series of adversaries to overcome.
I thought as soon as the movie gave it set up to me, my immediate thought was, oh, this will be a great video game.
I would play the shit out of it.
Absolutely.
Somebody pick this license up.
Early Platinum Games on this thing, just put in the Mad World engine.
I was thinking our boys at RGG could make a good game out of this.
Yeah, they did a Fist of the North Star game.
Yeah.
There is precedent for them to do adaptations, and with Ishin, they did an adaptation of History, so, you know,
I've heard
maybe.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you ever heard of the Meiji Restoration?
This film takes place in the far-off dystopian hyper-capitalist future of the year 2001, where prisons have become a commodified private industry. I mean, in terms of opening text scrolls that really scrolls or crawls. I said scrolls. What do you think about that?
I thought scroll was correct, actually.
Opening text scroll. Maybe it is a thing.
Yeah.
In terms of big words flying onto the screen to get you invested in the world that you're watching, it's Star Wars. And it's RIKI-OH, because from the first frame of this film, I wish I had it verbatim in front of me, but it's very similar to what I kind of just laid out there. It's like, the year's 2001, prisons have taken over capitalism, they're all privatized, hyper-militarized, dystopian hellscapes, the world sucks, here's Ricky, he's gonna fix it.
The analogy they use is literally like, prisons are just like parking lots now.
Yeah.
Which is just a very evocative sentence.
And
it's also funny, like, I feel like the no politics in art crowd, they would take something like Ricky that's on its surface very dumb and goofy. And it's like, from the jump, this movie's like, yeah, it's hyper political, deal with it. Alright, now let's rip this dude's entrails out.
How hyper political is it?
I'm just saying, the statement in and of itself posits the film as some kind of commentary or like a speculative fiction. There's no two ways around it. I'm not saying it's a great text.
Yeah.
Up there with like William Gibson, you know.
Prison's bad. Like, capitalism bad. Capitalism equals prison? Question mark?
Parking lot?
Parking lot?
Question mark?
You know,
I'm just saying it's an interesting idea to consider.
Yeah, I think it's as political as the film gets, but it's good enough up top to just kind of to draw me in. My little ears are perking up the second I'm seeing that shit. No,
the entire movie is about how the prison complex is evil. Like,
yeah,
the movie never backs off of its like stance as an anti like carceral state film.
Let me tell you, when the warden turns into a giant sort of troll monster, I was like, "Yep, we got to tear these things down."
Look.
No one's free till we're all free.
I don't want to get on a soapbox about RIKI-OH, the story of Ricky. I think it just does a disservice to the movie to be like, there's 17 words and that's the end of its political message. It's like, it is clearly an anti-prison, anti-drug trade like film.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's how we're introduced to it, and Ricky is being kind of ferried into the prison. There's a cool shot of like this prisoner bus driving across this big long bridge, taking them out to this kind of isolated, very high security prison, which, you know, contrasting with the introduction, we know that this particular prison isn't just one of these, you know, as common as a shopping mall kind of prisons. This one's kind of a big deal, as we'll come to learn. But it's really a bad scenario to find yourself in. And I like the way the like intro to this movie is just introducing these, it's like 2 or 3 just kind of real meek run-of-the-mill prisoners, and then as soon as our boy Ricky steps on camera, you're like, this is a different film than what I thought I was watching. You know,
he says one of the hardest things in film history. He goes through a metal detector, which immediately goes off. The cops search him
because he's shirtless, right?
Yeah. And it turns out he has 5 bullets lodged in him, and they're like, Ricky, why didn't you have the surgeon pull him out? And he just goes, souvenirs. And I was like, fuck, dude, all right, let's go. I mean, 50 Cent made a career off that same thing.
That's right.
You remember that? That was 50 Cent's whole thing?
Yeah, like he got shot
9 times.
9 times?
Yeah. That's an astounding amount of times to be shot. Like
I would like to be shot 9 times less than that in my life.
I mean, I would say more impressive than being the owner of Vitamin Water is surviving being shot 9 times in your life.
But which is more
wild.
hardcore?
Which cost him more money?
Restoring electrolytes to the masses? It's hard to say.
Which one bankrupted him? Didn't he go bankrupt after?
I don't know.
They
call him 25 Cent now. He had to liquidate some of those assets.
That's a good joke.
Thank you. What's Ricky doing in prison? He killed some people. Oh, that's not great. I wouldn't do that. I don't agree with that from a moral standpoint, but hey, you do what you got to do. How quickly does this film sort of just flip on itself, being like, look, here's the entire backstory. We're not going to play particularly coy. 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
I mean, yeah, you're within the gore within like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, there's a dude, his name's Ricky, he's kind of a rude dude with attitude, and he's going to commit atrocities in this prison. Are you ready?
Yeah.
And as a little freak, as a little pervert. Well, yeah, I'm ready.
Of course I'm ready. That's what I saw the poster, I saw the trailer, I know what I'm here for.
But like, that's why I'm saying it's a masterclass in film pacing, because the whole reason we're here is to be little perverts.
Yeah,
the film does not tease you.
It's no bullshit experience.
Yeah.
There's a 2.5 hour version of this film with all of the trimmings attached that this particular movie and this particular story just decided to excise up top. So the backstory, I think we should just dispense with it now because it's probably the easiest way to rip through the rest of the plot. Ricky was trained from a young boy by his uncle/grandfather in a graveyard in the ancient martial art of Qigong, which you focus all of your energy into your body, and then you're able to just punch through basically anything with no problem whatsoever.
A fun little tidbit about his uncle is, as far as I know, it's the only Japanese actor in the film. It's Tetsuro Tamba, who has been in he was in a bunch of the Kenji Fukasaku things, like the Battles Without Honor and Humanity series. He was in Graveyard of Honor by Miike, which is a Fukasaku remake. He was in Gozu, 13 Assassins, the one from 1963. When he popped on screen, I was like, this guy is so familiar, and I looked him up, and there you go. It was because I had seen him in countless Fukasaku and Miike movies.
Those graveyard training sequences are pretty incredible.
They go so hard.
It's really just classic sort of, gotta focus on my energy to become so pissed off and so strong. And guess what? He is, and it works.
As a white man in America, I am so pissed off too.
I'm not strong enough to punch through a tombstone. Just kind of but hey, maybe if I go sit and focus for a while, I could get there.
Yeah, but we don't quite learn why Ricky's in prison yet. They do tease that out.
Yeah, well, they say up top that he
committed manslaughter. We don't we don't know the context.
We do sort of get a couple of those flashbacks in this sequence as well, where it's like, I think we see a little bit of the altercation, but don't understand kind of the reasoning and what's going on. We definitely meet the girlfriend character early on here too as well, which is just like they're playing the slide whistle together, throwing an airplane in a glorious field, just doing beautiful things that young lovers do. It really warms the heart.
That's right. And keeping it pure.
Keeping it very pure, yeah. The whole music subplot in here, it's like Ricky plays the
yeah, he plays a leaf.
Like a leaf,
flute.
Yeah, and a flute.
Like a literal leaf.
He's just so talented.
And also, early in the film, it's like, Riki-OH, 21 years old, went to music school. Okay, right on.
He had a bright future ahead of him before he was tragically thrown into the life of crime.
Yeah.
So, who's the first guy to get on Ricky's bad side? How does that happen?
He's just like a little prison bully, a petulant little bitch, gets his comeuppance.
Yeah.
He's bullying this dude. He's like, I just made a toy for my kid. And they beat the shit out of this poor guy. And then Ricky walks in and is like, well, time to kill you. And they fucking punches through the dude's stomach.
Riki is the arbiter of honor. If he sees anyone being mean, cruel, a little bully, he says, "Listen up here, pal. I'm gonna rip through your intestines with my bare hands."
Literally a lot of this movie is similar to the plot of One Punch Man. A man so strong he will kill you in one punch.
Yeah. Is this the fight scene that's like in the showers or whatever, right?
There are two in the bathrooms showers. This is the first one of those. Yeah.
I understand that that's always happening in the prisons as well. Yeah.
There's a funny scene later in the shower where another fight ensues where all the men are naked except Riki because he has to turn around, so he's wearing underwear in the shower.
As soon as this first outburst of violence occurs, he kind of gets on the radar of my favorite character in the film, who's not the warden, the kind
assistant
of
warden.
What? Assistant
warden
with a false eye and a hook hand, who has the most sort of elaborate office setup where people wheel him in gourmet meals and he's watching porno on VHS tapes all the time.
His office is covered in VHSs of pornos. It's like such an amazing sight. I wish that's what my living room looked like. I'm not sure I would sit around watching VHS porno.
Especially when people are coming in trying to do business with you. They're like, there's this guy who's murdering all your other prisoners. And he's like, yep, that sounds really tough. I'm going to get to it right after this.
A weird thing about this man that I couldn't quite put my finger on was he has a false eye that he's always pulling out and then pouring mints out of and offering them to people. So he has mints in his cranium.
I think that's what they call a little gag, a little goof.
It must be something from the manga. That sounds like something dumb that would be in manga.
He also kind of says, hey, if this Riki guy's bad news, I know a handful of people who can maybe put a stop to it. And it's literally the gang of four, just his biggest, meanest, baddest kind of associates, underlings, however you want to call it.
Are they prisoners? I couldn't quite figure this out.
Yeah, I kind of got the sense that they were like making the best of a bad situation and are kind of like, look, you get free reign in the prison here if you do our dirty work and kind of agree to just like clean up all of the messes for us. They all seem to really relish the violence and the killing and that whole entire experience. So I think, they're at least enjoying whatever it is that they're doing.
Look, I'm gonna level with you, AJ Moser.
Please do.
I really don't know if we need to go beat by beat in this movie.
Okay. Take me somewhere interesting.
Any reason anyone's gonna watch this movie and why people are gonna listen to this movie is to hear about the kills.
Yeah.
Of which there are many, and they're all spectacular. But I'd like to start. You had not seen this movie until like 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, basically. It had been on my radar for a very long time.
And now you have watched it 5 times.
I think it's more like 3 or 4. Yeah.
Okay. So
I've watched the original Cantonese. I've watched the English dub, and then I've hopped around with the commentaries a couple of times.
So I just want to start there. Like, what was your first watch through like?
Yeah, I mean, I found the storytelling to be rather bare bones and basic, but in a film like this, I'm like, we're just going from whatever you want to call set piece to set piece, violent moment to violent moment, kill to kill.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the like creativity of the filmmaking and how sparse some of the sets were. Like it lent this feeling of just such oppressive emptiness in all of the industrial spaces of the prison. Like
I think it looks like it's shot in a real prison, maybe a decommissioned one.
Yeah, or that they just like built a bunch of, they had like one warehouse and they would just throw up like a slab wall and then be like, okay, here's a prison cell, here's the shower thing. Like, so all of that was really cool because it's so like bare bones and basic from a production design standpoint, and you can tell that they were putting the money and the effort into the stunt coordination and the gore and the kills and all of that.
Okay, but I mean, like, what stood out to you watching it?
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe the blood and guts.
Here's the thing, AJ. I know you're a serial rewatcher of films.
Yes.
It's a quality of yours I do envy. However, I was a little shocked to realize you had watched this film 3, 4, if you ask me, 5 by my count times. So like, what was it about that initial watch through? Like, did you know the level of violence, or did you just know it was violent? Were you taken back by the wackiness? Like, what drew you to want to rewatch this thing so many times in 2 weeks, aside from Blake kept rescheduling recording?
Oh yeah, no, it definitely was the kind of, cascading structure of the film. That's like, it's pretty easy to just like get lost in the escalation of the violence. I kind of wanted to appreciate the structure a bit more and get a sense of like what was really happening outside of just this barrage of constant violence. And like appreciate the differences in how the story was being presented in both versions.
Sure. Any standouts from that?
Well, I think, like I mentioned up top, I think the English dub is a lot more inherently kind of comical. I think there's a lot lost when you can't really understand the language that they're speaking and you're reading subtitles. And so, in that way, it felt a lot more like, okay, maybe they're like really trying to do a more straight adaptation of like the manga storyline, or like present these characters in a bit more of a way. Like, it felt like there are more realized characters in the original version, and the English version is kind of just like, doesn't matter who this guy is, you just have to say this line that's like, Ricky, I'm gonna kill you, you're so bad.
Yeah, I it's a little bit of a bummer I had to watch the dub, because like, I must have been 18 when I watched this last, and truly don't, other than some other kills, I didn't remember anything.
You must have been, because it's a category 3 film. You couldn't watch it if you were under 18.
That's right. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think the way I watched this, and this goes back to my early film watching history, is I think this was on demand, like Insight or something on demand. And I wish I could remember what channel, but there were all these like free movies we could get on demand at my parents' house. And that's where I watched like Gummo the first time. I think Ichi the Killer, because they would just have like, it would be like the satellite channels, and they would have on-demand channels, and they would have free films on them. So I would just like watch all this shit. And I really think the way I watched this movie the first time was scrolling through that and seeing RIKI-OH, the story of Ricky. I mean, like, that's a really dumb movie name. I'm throwing it on. And if I remember correctly, I watched this thing completely blind.
Yeah,
I went into it not knowing a single fucking thing.
The first time I heard of this movie came on my radar was I saw the trailer in a theater, like a repertory theater that was doing a screening or something. And as you can imagine, the trailer for this movie is pretty fucking good, because they just slam in all of the guys bursting through walls, guys bursting through other guys, men transforming into demons, all that sort of shit. And so I saw that trailer and I'm like, what the hell was that movie? For one reason or another, I didn't, see it in the theater. But it's kind of been on my watch list ever since. And I knew that, or, in doing that cursory look into it, I learned that it was pretty inaccessible. So I got my hands on that Blu-ray, and then I was like, well, here we go, baby. It's Ricky time.
It's weird. It felt like it was accessible for a while.
Yeah, like I think it was on
Mubi.
I think it was on Arrow's streaming service.
I think, I'm almost certain it was on Amazon, but yesterday, it was nowhere.
Yeah, like all the listings are kind of still up, but it just says like this title is not available. So it's a weird sort of thing.
Rights must have switched over sometime in the last year or something.
Yeah, I know that Golden Harvest is pretty defunct as of now. I wonder if that was just a thing where it's like they kind of sent it out and were like, hey, you guys want us to host this movie still? And it was just like, hey, this company doesn't exist anymore. Sorry about that. Which is a bummer, because they did some great work.
Yeah. I mean, what an awesome film to just have like sprung out of like early. I'm not saying it came out of nowhere in its home country, but like back then in America, it was not very often we got any foreign film, honestly. So the fact this film somehow made its way over is like a little bit of a miracle that we like know about it, especially as long as it's been around, because I feel like it's been kicking around for decades at this point.
Yeah, I forget which other episode we were kind of talking about this on, but that burst in the 90s where it was just like, look, for some reason the sickos, the perverts over here in America are just like, anything, East Asian with extreme violence or sort of these dark, crazy themes, just like, we'll eat that shit up.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of them, I guess a lot of them were caught up in, I think, the J-horror boom.
Yeah.
Which, like, I think people kind of reflect a little, like, they have a bit of a revisionist history these days on that whole thing. But, like, it was pretty amazing in just what it brought over, because by the time Audition, Ring, Battle Royale, and Grudge were blowing up, Tartan was just buying the license for everything. Tokyo Shock was buying the license for a lot of stuff. Arts Magic came around. And so the J-horror boom really brought along, like, a new era of, like, late 90s, early 2000s martial arts, Yakuza films, like, all this stuff that now we, like, recognize as, like, legendary works in cult or just in world cinema in general. Like, honestly, we kind of have the J-horror boom. At least people our age.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we probably wouldn't know about a lot of it without, like, the J-horror boom, which people seem to be like, yeah, but some of those movies were a little derivative. And it's like, yeah, but we also, like, know who a lot of these people are because of those movies.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean...
And I think that's probably the case here as well.
It's not like this movie was sort of an instant runaway success or anything like that either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it did fine at the box office or whatever, you know, however you want to judge that. Like, people kind of saw it and appreciated it for what it was, but it was in those years immediately sort of following when it was getting released on DVD or VHS or whatever it would be, and people kind of took an interest to it. I think a lot of, like, you know, teenagers could watch it at home and were like, holy shit, like, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm reading here too that it actually was on, like, Netflix in one of their early streaming iterations, like when they started doing that.
Oh,
yeah,
maybe that's where I watched it. I wonder. Yeah, because
apparently it also got a, like, recent sort of remastered translation. I'm not really sure how this works, but the Blu-ray that I have, the subtitles on the, you know, original version there were totally like a net new translation or version of the subtitles. So that's pretty interesting, just based on what I was talking about earlier, where I was like, it kind of feels like a more distinct storytelling experience at the very least.
Okay.
So maybe I've got to rewatch it again if I can track down this sort of original English hard-coded.
Brother, go to whatever website you sent me yesterday.
Yeah.
You definitely gave my work computer a virus and watch it there.
That is what it is.
This was not a good print of this movie, not good subtitles. Like, it was some bare bones shit I watched last night. How does your version look, actually?
Incredible. It's really great.
God.
Like, it looks so good. It's one of the better Blu-rays that I own for sure.
God, mine looked so bad.
I know. I scrubbed through it. I was like, I want to make sure this is the whole movie I'm sending Blake, and not just like 5 minutes of Ricky, and then it turns into porn.
It's a deleted scene. The assistant warden just pulls a VHS off,
and he's like, "Okay, we're gonna watch this now, kids."
Honestly, that would be hilarious.
More movies should do that.
So the best kill in the movie is when the guy punches at Ricky and he punches back and their hands meet and
all of his fingers get blown off.
He punches into the guy's whole arm.
Yeah.
In amazing moment.
I really like the courtyard fight where Ricky rips the dude's eye out. And then the dude sort of goes to commit seppuku out of shame.
Right.
Stabs himself, cuts himself open, and then is like, hey, this was just a trick. Pulls out his guts, wraps them around Ricky.
Legendary.
Yeah, and someone in the courtyard yells, like, you've got a lot of guts, Oscar, that's as good as a movie could get.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, the end, of course, is amazing, where he puts the final boss, if you will, through an industrial-sized meat grinder.
Yeah, people talk about Chekhov's gun a lot. This film has Chekhov's meat grinder.
Explain.
What?
What?
Yeah, well, no, you know what a Chekhov's gun is,
there's
right?
a meat grinder
yeah,
in the film.
They introduce a meat grinder early, like in Act
Yeah.
2, and then in Act 3, you're like, someone's going through that meat grinder, and they save it for the last, and like, just, okay.
That's very funny. That is very funny.
Thank you. You were poo-pooing it on it earlier, and I was like, come on now. I love the ways that this movie skates around, or perhaps doesn't skate around, probably its budget limitations, where it will use very obviously fake stand-ins or like someone gets thrown off a
dummies.
roof and it's very clearly a dummy, and then the whole like plastic version of the
God.
final boss.
One of my favorite kills in this film. I guess not a kill. You don't actually see the kill, but one of my favorite like attacks in this film is when we meet a character. He's kind of this meat character who hangs around the 4 pit bosses.
Yeah.
Who has had his tongue cut off. That's a whole weird plot point.
Ricky teaches him to play the flute, so it's all good.
Yeah, as well, his bros, for lack of a better term, realize he's been fraternizing with the enemy, and they just slice at his face, and there's like, it just cuts everything from below his nose, and it just falls down like a sheet.
That's
like,
a bummer.
it is just exposed muscle and shit. It's so good.
Another great
so
jaw
good.
moment in this movie is in one of the last fights. Ricky just punches someone's face so hard that it sort of caves in their mouth.
Oh yeah. See, that's why let's just skip the plot.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we're hyped about. I also really loved the grown adult man-child. He was a good character.
Oh my god.
Very
Okay.
funny.
Well, yeah, let's get through the rest of the plot. Basically, we were so close.
Okay.
We're introduced to like the gang of 4, who I think we've just described how they all, basically end up dying. That's most of the movie, honestly, is just being like dispatched with these sort of ne'er-do-wells. At once things I think there's actually a pretty funny moment where they come into the assistant warden's office and he's eating another steak. Like, did the steak eating moment stick out to you as much as it stuck out to me? Maybe this is just a thing of watching the movie so many times. It's like, this is a movie that moves very quickly. It's a very brisk film. It's like 90 minutes with credits. And so it really doesn't dwell on much of anything. And a lot of that is just like violence and gore. The introduction of the assistant warden character is like a very long tracking shot where somebody wheels in like a, whatever you want to call it, silver platter, that they bring up to his desk. He undoes it. It's like this big, juicy fucking steak. You see him using his claw hand to cut the thing open, and then it like tracks up to the reveal of his face with the eye and the hand and everything. You're just like, this guy's demented. But then he's like just gratuitously eating this steak, and they're talking about like, there's this guy, this new prisoner Ricky, and he's causing all sorts of problems. And the guy's like, whatever, like, we'll just fucking deal with him. I love the assistant warden so much. I'm so captivated by him.
I don't think the pacing of it stood out to me, but the scene is excellent.
Yeah, well, just in a film that really doesn't make time for much of anything at all, like that bit, that sort of introduction to the assistant warden's gluttony, whatever you want to call it, is given about as much time in the film as the backstory of Ricky's girlfriend's tragic death. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something I've thought about a lot with this movie is, in a movie full of some badass, scary dudes, Ricky's a bit of a twink.
Well, I love it. He's just the sort of like perfect Ubermensch, but he's a boy, like an Uber boy.
AJ.
Come on, you can say that.
Say
that term, it's removed from its negative connotations.
No.
It's in a Shins song. It can't be bad.
Well, the Shins are a bad band.
Oh, come on. I don't want to hear it. So okay. Well, the funny scene that I was building to there is we've gotten to know the assistant warden very well to be just a comical degree of a fuck up. And they're like, oh, well, if the real warden ever hears about this, you're in trouble. And the assistant warden's like, well, don't worry, he's busy on vacation with his kid or whatever. And then the next day it's like, the warden's back. And they literally roll out the red carpet to get him out of the car. And then we see his beautiful, beautiful fail son, beautiful big boy, like a grown man dressed like a child from Earthbound. Who's just eating candy. That's one of the best things you can do in a movie, to let me know that a character is a piece of shit, is just have them be constantly eating candy. I'm like, okay, I know what's going on here.
Well, in World of Conoco,
Yep.
The bad cop always had a lollipop.
That's right.
Okay, tag yourself. Which one of me and you is the warden? Which one's the son?
I'm the son.
I don't think
I'm
so.
the petulant
You're
little boy.
I don't think
I'm
so.
like, Papa, I want to rewatch the story of Ricky again.
Unfortunately, I think I'm the son. Because you're like a pretty, despite what it may appear on podcasts and on your Twitter feed, you're a very well put together man. You're a homeowner. And I eat candy for dinner at 28 years old. So unfortunately, I think I'm the little boy here.
What happens on the red carpet? They kind of somebody makes a fool of themselves, and they're like, okay.
Well, they're walking down the carpet and they kind of trip a little bit. And so they're like, who rolled this carpet? And they're like, it's this prisoner right here. And he's like, you didn't check the carpet before putting it down? And he stabs his eye out with an umbrella. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, now I see what happened to the assistant warden.
Excellent. That's what they call showing, not telling.
That's right.
So now the warden's in play.
Yeah. Not seeing. Yes. Showing, seeing.
Brother, I picked up what you were putting down.
That's right.
We get these great little bits from the warden where he's like, God, I'm getting so pissed off. I have to take my medication before I have this disease where something bad happens if I get too pissed off. Don't worry about that. It won't come back into play anytime soon.
I didn't even realize that's what that
was.
Oh
yeah. Cause he's like shaking and he starts transforming a little bit. He just starts getting like he's gonna rip out of his suit or whatever.
Oh, it didn't even occur to me. I just was like, oh, the guy's got a heart problem. Yeah. I went to the doctor for my heart the other day. I understand this man's pain. It didn't even occur to me. He was turning into the motherfucking bull.
The Hulk. The big bull. And then I guess another thing worth mentioning too is Ricky discovers that they're growing opium and like using the prison basically as just this low-key drug ring. And it's at that point where Ricky's like, okay, cool. I've got full moral justification to just go sicko mode, to go ape shit on these guys. Hold nothing back. Like, everybody can die.
Like I said, hyper-political film.
That's right. Well, because it's the, the opium drug dealers in his pre-prison life who sort of, are harassing his girlfriend and then, like, they're gonna murder her, but she jumps off the roof. That's why he goes apeshit. And the sequence where the sort of, like origin moment for Ricky's supernatural abilities is done really well, where, he unloads on these guys and does get shot however many times. Not as many as 50 Cent, but pretty close. He's got those bullets lodged in him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, everything's come full circle. We've closed our loops, and now it's time for Ricky to just go on the fucking rampage that we've been waiting this entire movie for, the entire hour that we've been watching so far.
There is a moment in this film, AJ, that gave me a bit of, I don't know, an existential nightmare for a moment.
Okay, spill.
And you'll have to wait after this commercial break. I gotta pee so bad. Be right back.
I'll pee.
You want to just slide back into it?
Yeah, tell me about the moment in this movie that ruined your fucking life.
It's this okay, so it's in the same scene where the guy gets his arm punched through. Great moment of on-scene violence. Or on-screen violence. And
on-scene violence, he said. I'm done with sleeping with sirens or whatever.
Yeah, mise-en-scene violence. There's a giant, I don't know what you call it, a weight just descending from the ceiling to crush Ricky. Mm. And I was watching this movie. Of course, Ricky's going to escape. It's going to be fine. But I started
it's his story,
and I that's right, the story of. I started imagining myself in that scenario. These countless films this has occurred in, where the walls close in or the ceiling closes in. I started imagining what it would be like in the final moments of that. To feel your entire body crushed under the weight of
that's one of the
giant wall.
One of the versions of death that often freaks me out the most. That and like someone being tied up and lit on fire, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like my brain watching the scene honestly shut off for a solid minute as I just kind of freaked out about imagining this, like giving myself like anxiety over it.
It's close to the most frightening death imaginable, which of course we can say it at the exact same time, is being trapped under a sheet of ice trying to break out.
Having to talk to the Chapo Trap House people.
That's right. Well, shit. I mean, there's less than 20 minutes left in the movie. Ricky's just going fucking ape. He's just beating guys down, and we know that they all deserve it at this point.
He's going crazy ass on him.
Yeah. He's holding nothing back. Like, And then there's sort of we should talk about my favorite character, how he meets his tragic end, which is actually not at the hands of Riki, but in a great moment, Riki sort of throws the assistant warden down the stairs and gives him to the prisoners in this sort of moment of like, people of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. They just fucking tear him apart.
This also scared me for a weird moment. Thinking about like feral crowds really freaked me out. And like imagining what this warden was about to go through and how helpless he was kind of freaked me out. I mean, he deserves it,
yeah.
But,
so you would never deserve it, yeah.
Feral crowds are a terrifying thing. You remember that scene in Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds where they shoot the guy in the car?
Yeah.
Scary moment.
Like being literally torn apart limb from limb. Not the way I want to go out. Let's leave it at that.
Exactly.
There's a really cool fight in like the bathroom. Again, I think this is our second bathroom fight where, Riki at this point is just, he's kind of activated his inner Goku and is just literally punching through guys. It's like, your stomach, boom, there's a hole in that. Your jaw, boom, that's been removed. Your arm,
One Punch Man.
What arm? Yeah, like, okay, I've watched the first episode of One Punch Man, so I know the deal.
Wait.
Yeah.
You haven't watched One Punch Man?
I watched the first episode and I was like, okay, I get it.
No, AJ. You would love One Punch Man.
I believe it.
Even I've watched One Punch Man.
I know.
And I am unmovable in my anti-anime stance.
I don't have time to watch One Punch Man. I've got to watch RIKI-OH, The Story of Riki 5 times.
No, you gotta watch One Punch Man, dude. It's literally RIKI-OH.
Maybe I'll throw on episode 2.
Literally, I was watching RIKI-OH last night, and I was like, "Oh, One Punch Man, got it."
Yeah, I've seen some panels from the manga. I've not read any of it myself, but it looks really cool. It actually looks a lot. The art style looks a lot like Fist of the North Star, and also sort of like Berserk. I have no idea what the sort of overall story structure of the thing is, but it's really fascinating that, you know, a product like that could turn into something like this before you were getting these like flashy, well-produced anime adaptations for kind of any bespoke series that was popular for long enough. I kind of feel like that's where it's much more of a direct pipeline these days, where if a manga is sort of received well in any fashion, it kind of gets fast-tracked into at least like one season of an anime adaptation. But, you know, in this period, it was like your longer serialized stuff, like this is probably right around when Dragon Ball's beginning to become popular, right? Like the first one. Didn't that one start in like the late 80s? I don't know. I'm not a huge Dragon Ball guy.
I think so.
Yeah. But, you know, so what they were doing, and this applies too to stuff like video game movies in the original way that a lot of this was just like, hey, here's kind of a scrappy budget, like put the characters people want to see on the screen, make it real people. The movie can look like shit. We'll sell it on the name. You know, this is before the sort of corporate commodification of nerd culture began. So it's a pretty cool little thing to see. Like, could you imagine making a sort of X-rated One Punch Man movie in this day? And like if they made a fucking live action movie out of that, it would be all cartoony and colorful and whatnot. And there would be no blood, no guts.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right?
I did not really. Well, I don't know, because the thing I'm thinking of right now is Gantz-O, which like they maintained the manga's darkness. Like they did not make it like family friendly. And so I'm wondering if like, I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment. Have you watched Gantz-O?
No, but I'm familiar.
We have to watch that for Region Free. That movie's insane.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really answer your question.
No, it was more of a thought experiment.
Well, I guess
you vibed with it.
I guess because it's like, isn't One Punch Man like Shonen Jump or something? Which is like, they are not going to want to put something out that's like only adults can see, I feel like. So yeah, maybe not. You wouldn't get something like RIKI-OH these days for One Punch Man, except RIKI-OH is basically One Punch Man.
These sort of, exploitation era Cat 3, like trauma B-movie type movies were really a cottage industry at their time. And I think, history hasn't forgotten them, but I think like their overall legacy isn't really judged as much or as appropriately as it should be, you know?
We've talked about Cat 3, we've talked about Pink films, you just brought up Trauma.
Yeah.
Like, are there any equivalents these days? I mean, there's plenty of transgressive, genre-pushing, extreme violent, sex, whatever, coming out. But, like, it doesn't feel like any of them are, like, exist in pockets anymore the way they used to in the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, you know,
80s, 70s, way back. Like,
a lot of the movies that we've discussed or have talked about doing for this show, I've sort of become aware of or have watched or been exposed to through something like Shudder, which I think is a sort of natural extension of that mindset of filmmaking. Like a lot of, you know, it obviously takes a lot of the stuff that was already made and preserves it and kind of positions it in a way that's like, hey, here's why this is worth seeing or like worth keeping around in the culture. And then there are all the kind of boutique Blu-ray distributors, which are, in so many words, like the reason we or the kind of, you know, thesis this podcast is built around. But, you know, I think of something, I bring up Shudder because I think of something like Skinamarink, which was like this experimental, unrated horror movie that like played at a festival, or like We're All Going to the World's Fair, same sort of thing. These experimental little horror movies that get enough attention, get kind of well received, and then get this distribution behind them. They're obviously not the same in terms of like the budget, the gore, the exploitation, but they are these objects that feel like they kind of skirt under what mainstream distributors kind of build as acceptable or accessible entry points for filmmakers.
I guess this will be an interesting conversation to revisit in a couple of years, because maybe that is what I was thinking of was like different waves of films we got, you know, and like I wonder if in 5 years we'll talk about like, oh yeah, remember in the early 2020s we had that wave of internet horror.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like Unfriended or shit like that. Like
I am.
Stuff that is rooted stuff that's rooted in the idea of growing up online and preying on those fears. I wonder if that'll be, because I think Skinamarink maybe is fairly similar.
Yeah, I mean, I bring those two up for a very specific reason, because they're pretty intrinsically linked in my estimation, where they're... Go ahead.
No, you.
They're very similar films. Like, they're obviously set in different time periods and deal with different subject matter, but the sort of structure and the things that the filmmakers are trying to say, like, to tie it back to a film like this, like, the exploitation era, your cannibal holocausts, your descents, your whatever you want to call it, like, that's all been done already. And so it kind of makes sense that like you can't really go back to the well and just be like, we're going to do something transgressive. And it's, you know, that's how you get Rob Zombie films, Eli Roth films, right?
Come on.
Well, no. I'm just saying that it's like, for as much as I like those movies, it's not like they were reinventing the wheel. It was like, these are the movies that I liked watching. Like, Eli Roth literally went like, I liked Cannibal Holocaust. I'm going to make a movie that's like, what if they made Cannibal Holocaust today? And it sucked.
Yeah, the movie's really bad. I guess like I don't know that we've really seen any like waves in extremity the way like the last one. I mean, granted, I'm no film historian, but the last one I can really think of is like New French Extremity, which was, you know, the aughts. Feels like we haven't seen that, even though like definitely the extreme cinema world is blowing up right now. I would hesitate to call that a wave, because it's like, how do you lump in like pseudo snuff and fetish stuff into like, and also that's not cracking the mainstream.
Yeah, exactly.
Crucially, you know, outside of YouTube where it is, but like you're not going and seeing that at like the Toronto International Film Festival or whatever. So it's interesting. Like, internet horror, I do not think it's that either. It's not pushing into those extremes. It'll be interesting to see if we ever have a new wave of like extreme films, whether it's like stuff like Cat 3 or Pink or New French, whatever it might be. Granted, it's hard to say Pink and Cat 3 are waves because they're based around industries. And
the sort of sentiment stands there, where it's like when a Category 3 movie or a Pink movie sort of came out, you could point at it and recognize and be like, okay, this is clearly following in a legacy. And I think a lot of that style of filmmaking has now sort of been absorbed by a company like a Neon or an A24, where it's just like, in some ways, the brand, the producer, the distributor becomes the selling point for the film, where it's just like, oh, this is the new A24 movie. Like, I want to see it now, which is inherently lamer than what these organic movements were. But it's all we've got.
Dude, we should do a season on Pink films.
You want to make me watch some pornos?
Yes, dude.
Okay.
There's some incredible Pink films that will blow your little baby boy mind. We gotta do a season. I'm trying to get fired from my job, clearly.
Well, shit. Let's talk about the final fight in this film, which, for a movie that's so gratuitous, involved, over the top, and violent, it's not like the final fight is a disappointment or a letdown, but it is very quick. There's a brevity to it.
You stick a motherfucker in a industrial sized meat grinder, he's not getting back up. I don't know if you knew that. It's about the human body.
It's one of those fights where it's like, look, it's going to be 2 hits. I'm going to hit you and you're going to hit the floor. This one's more like, you're going to punch me, you're going to transform into the Hulk, I'm going to throw you into a meat grinder. So
again, One Punch Man.
One Punch Man. I mean, that's basically how it goes. Ricky kind of clears house.
It's awesome.
The warden comes in, is like, you, me, let's just get this over with. They kind of engage them in a little slap fight, pretty casual. And then the big boss gets so fucking mad that he hulks out, transforms into a big puppet monster. And then Ricky basically just grabs him and is like, nah, throws him into the meat grinder. And like, well, no, saying throws him into the meat grinder does a disservice to this, where it's like he packs him into the meat grinder. He gets every limb in there, and you watch it all just get turned into fucking dust and sausage.
And then he pulls the head out, he saves the head, runs it out to the prisoners, throws it and says, you're free, goes and punches down the wall and runs away, and the credits roll.
Now, this is where I will stick up for the political underpinnings of RIKI-OH, the story of Ricky, because throwing down the head of the oppressor, punching down the prison walls, and freeing, the throngs of working men, it's not hard to pick up what you're putting down there. And I'm not talking about the warden's head.
And worth pointing out, they were all nonviolent offenders, arrested over petty drug crimes or petty theft, like all nonviolent. It was totally okay to let them back into society.
Communist icon RIKI-OH. RIKI-OH, go on, go on, Chapo.
Yeah. Nah, come on.
He's too cool.
Come on. Fucking
banger movie.
Blast of a movie.
So good.
It's so good.
You won't have a bad time watching it. Guaranteed. Like, you literally, it's impossible.
You got any recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. So my recommendations are based off the English dub, because I know that's the version that you most recently watched, and just stuff that I thought of. I think actually maybe where I saw the trailer for RIKI-OH was I saw a 35mm print of Shogun Assassin, which is the English dubbed version of the first 3 Lone Wolf and Cub movies spliced together and then dubbed in English. So not a great sort of movie in and of itself, but a really fun little experiment. You take 3 movies in this infamous, beloved 20-something film series from Japan, smush the first 3 of them together, and then dub it over in English. You're going to lose a lot. But that's a really great film, sort of from a similar era, and kind of a nice little object that documents the American bastardization and fascination with kind of, films like this. That one's more of the samurai era, but kind of has a similar production quality and vibe to it. And then a little film that I recently rewatched, that I think is another perfect film, one of the best comedies ever made, and that would be a little movie called Black Dynamite. Which sits similarly in the obvious exploitation space. That one very clearly is a parody, but I think one of the best parody films ever made, because it's so instinctually understands the genre that it's riffing on and what exploitation films were doing and how they were made. And part of the appeal and the charm of that movie is how it plays on those aesthetics. And I also think maybe at the end of the day, it is the funniest movie ever made. The deduction sequence in Black Dynamite is a scene that I think about all the time, and I think is maybe the funniest a movie has ever been. So if you haven't seen Black Dynamite, you must.
I think I only got one recommendation. It's another Cat 3, Darling. It's Herman Yao's Ebola Syndrome.
Yes, sir.
This film is nasty, bro. It's definitely playing in the theater of extremeness that Riki-Oh is. However, you basically follow just a piece of fucking shit played by Anthony, Chinese Best Acting Award. He won an award for Best Actor at the Chinese Academy Awards one time for a Cat 3 film directed by Herman Yao.
That's cool.
The Untold Story. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, he's in this, playing just a piece of fucking shit. Doing piece of shit. Contracts Ebola.
Piece of shit. Have you seen, go ahead.
He gets Ebola through, various means, go to Does the Dog Die before watching this one. Make sure you can handle this. And it ends with Anthony Wong running around the streets of Hong Kong, spitting at passerbys, yelling, Ebola. And it's crazy. And there's a really interesting read on the film. I don't know if is correct or not, but nevertheless, I think is a fun thought experiment when watching a movie as nasty, as nihilistic, and as vicious as Ebola Syndrome, which is easy to read as devoid of meaning and just celebrating cruelty. However, there's an interesting read of the film. Category 3 was not a Chinese film rating. It was a Hong Kong film rating when that was, I guess, would it be right to say an autonomous nation within Japan?
Well, it was,
China?
I was reading about the production of this film and kind of the way all of this era of filmmaking emerged is like, and this is fucked up to even consider. It was when Britain was handing Hong Kong back to China. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was about. There's a reading of Ebola Syndrome that it is one of the last gasps of a Cat 3 Hong Kong filmmaker before Britain gave Hong Kong back, and they didn't know if they would be able to continue Category 3 once they went under Chinese law, censorship, the film industry. And so some people see this movie as being as mean as it is, as one last fuck you to the world. If we can never do this again, here it is. I don't know if that's true. I feel like Herman Yao maybe has said, no, I just made this movie.
To make a movie where a guy spit on people. It sounded fun.
Yeah. I think he literally just did say, like, this was the script I was hired to make, so I made it. However, I think that reading is very interesting, and that movie is very good, if extremely uncomfortable to watch. But God, Vinegar Syndrome put out a pretty amazing Blu-ray of it a year or two ago.
In the Blu-ray that I have, that's fantastic, and anyone who's made it this far should just go fucking buy, because it's great. There's a really great essay in the booklet about sort of the legacy of Asian prison films, and that talks about Female Prisoner 701 Scorpion a lot in there.
Meiko Kaji.
Yeah, which is a movie that definitely, like, kind of has parallels to this, but it also talked about a lot of, like, Chui Hark films in that the whole On Fire series, which I think I referenced pretty heavily on the Triad Underworld episode. So, like, a little through line is emerging for some of the stuff that we're picking, but we're moving somewhere completely new for our next sort of month of films. You're hearing this episode, hopefully, unless it's, years in the future and you're listening on your fucking, I don't know, device that lives inside your frontal cortex. You're hearing that,
like in Hi-Fi Rush?
Yeah, like in Hi-Fi Rush. On your robot guitar arm. For March, the month that we're entering now, March 2023, we're going to be talking about films from France and the new French extremity, which is a beloved little genre of one Blake Hester movement era, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to be getting down and dirty. We're going to be talking about some freak shit, folks.
Can we just talk about the movies we're going to watch? Because this is going to be a month of not feeling good.
Not feeling great.
Let's see. First up, next week, we're watching Trouble Every Day from Claire Denis.
Yes. Genuinely one of my favorite films of all time. Has been in my Letterboxd top 4. That's the kind of movie we're talking about here.
Never seen it. It stars Beatrice Dahl, who, if you ask me, is a doll.
I recently met her in another film that we're going to be talking about.
I thought you meant literally.
That'd be great.
And then also one of the forefathers of this podcast, what is that? Vincent
Gallo, yeah.
I mean, I've never seen any of his
Trouble
movies,
Every Day
but I feel
is fucking, that movie's a trip.
I've never seen a movie with or by Vincent Gallo, but I do feel like he is one of the Mount Rushmore of Region 3.
He's used in that movie in the perfect way, which is like,
good.
What a piece of shit. What a fucking asshole.
From there, we're moving on to Inside La Intrude, a personal favorite of mine. My God. You know what? I'm going to say this. AJ, I know you've watched it. For as short and low budget as I say that as if that's a knock against the film. I think it is genuinely one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, at least in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this movie recently for the very first time and, like, had me... parts of it had me, like, turning lights on in my house, checking that there wasn't someone in the house with me, and then B, for parts of the finale, had me, like, with a blanket pulled up over my eyes, like, could not look at the screen. Like, if you want a movie that'll elicit a reaction, Inside 2007 is one.
Also starring Beatrice
That's
Dahl.
right.
Important, if anyone's going to pre-watch these before the show, it's important to note there is an American remake.
Do not watch that.
If you watch Inside and you can understand it, or B, it has Bo Burnham in it, you're watching the wrong movie. You need to be
or
watching
Willem
a
Dafoe.
French
They're
film.
making another one. It's not a remake.
Okay.
They're making a movie called Inside is what I meant by they're making another one.
Then we're moving on to Gaspar Noé's short, also starring Beatrice
That's
Dahl.
right. Maybe it's the
Lux
Beatrice Dahl season.
Lux Aeterna, which is something of a filmic experiment. Also, I think an ad for like Louis Vuitton or something. It's very strange.
Something like that. Do you know they're, I mean, maybe we'll just talk about this on that episode as well. They're doing the one night screening of the straight cut of Irreversible.
Where?
Like next month-ish. It should line up pretty close to when I'm recording that episode. It's playing in a theater by me, so maybe it's playing in a theater by you. I thought it was just a New York only thing, but it is coming.
Yeah, I should look that up.
Because, you know,
that would be interesting.
He's a freak. He's one of our faves.
It's not playing, but if you go see it, I think my copy of the movie has the straight cut. I could just watch it.
Really? I thought it was something brand new that he had just done.
I'll have to double check.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check.
That's a movie that we will not be doing an episode on, but we'll probably talk about at some point.
We could do it. Everyone has heard of Irreversible at this point. We could talk about it. It'd be fine. Then we're moving on to Frontiers.
Frontier and then open parentheses S close parentheses. You know, the French, they're going nuts.
I misspelled it in our Google Calendar. Awesome movie. If you liked Green Room, it's a good double feature. With
if you like Kevin Smith's Red State,
yeah. You know what? I did, but I've never revisited it.
I've only seen it once, but I was watching that movie recently as well too, and I was like, you know what? Getting a lot of Kevin Smith Red State vibes from this one.
Yeah. And then closing it out.
All-timer.
One of the newer entries in the new French canon.
From Julia D. Not Titane. It's Raw. A movie that I feel like, for as popular as Titane was, people don't talk about Raw or see it as much. They're actually, they're showing it at the Alamo here in Raleigh next month. And that's a movie that I saw for the first time in theaters, like at a midnight showing, and was like, you know, a beautiful experience I hold key to my heart. So I'm going to try and see that on the big screen again.
I won't presume it'll be the last movie to make me cry during a piss scene, but it definitely was the first that made me cry during a piss scene. Raw is...
It's raw. It's
we're gonna
raw.
Watch a lot of,
yeah.
We're going to watch a lot of ugly shit next month, but Raw is truly a beautiful movie.
Film. Yeah,
I love
like,
that.
You know, one of our favorites.
Yeah. So
get excited for the French experimenté.
Pierre Escargot. Back at it again.
We'll be eating croissants, and we will be recording every episode at 9 a.m. I don't know, like I fucked that joke up.
Here's my question though, AJ. Like, I'll happily admit I haven't seen a lot of the new French extremity deep cuts.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of the standbys. Are you other than the ones I know you've seen, are you like have you gone down this rabbit hole before? Or this like burgeoning territory for you? Like, have you seen Martyrs?
Yeah, Martyrs.
High Tension.
High Tension. There's one called Them, right? Is it Them or yeah? Mm-hmm. So like, I feel like those are I think I've seen like the Mount Rushmore kind of films of it. Like I know, and obviously all the Gaspar Noé stuff. Like I know the broad strokes of the movement, and after I watched Inside, I kind of was just like digging down that rabbit hole and seeing what else there was, just like following, the Beatrice Dahl films and stuff like that.
It's definitely one of those things where it's not an intentional movement; it's kind of retrospectively seen as a movement.
People were like, "What the fuck was going on?" And like, there's a lot of I think what we're gonna get into, or stuff that I was starting to piece together is like why, France is a country that obviously has a lot of cinematic history. Has a lot of history, period, overall, but has a lot of important, legacy in the history of cinema with filmmakers like Godard and Truffaut. And then what happened to make all these little perverts start making some of the most twisted movies you'll ever see in your life? I think there's a lot to dig into and pull apart there. So I'm really excited to be doing those episodes.
Did you ever like, I think this predates this era, but still we can just like consider it with the new French extremity. Did you ever see Man Bites Dog?
Yeah, of course.
Oh man, we talked about that movie recently on Something Rotten. I had to explain to Jacob.
You're like, and then this happens.
Yeah. What a fucking flick. Maybe we do a bonus on Man Bites Dog, because I've been wanting to rewatch that.
Territories is a really good one.
Shizan?
Yeah.
There's a lot
of
them.
And then stuff like.
Is there a movie called Seven?
I'm kind of just like looking at this list right now. Some friends of mine have requested that we do an episode on Demon Lover. Have you ever seen that film?
No.
Olivier Assayas.
Demon Lover. Is that the one? Is Chloe Sevigny in that? Or is that
Yeah, she's in this one.
Riveting radio. Okay. Yeah, I know what movie you're talking about. I've never seen it, though.
Yeah.
No.
People have told me that it would be a great fit for this pod.
Is this a French movie?
Yeah, it's Olivier Assayas who made Irma Vep, Clouds of Sils Maria, Cold Water. He's kind of a bit like he dips his toes into the freak shit sometimes.
I see. And then of course we'll be closing out the season with Amélie.
The most perverted film the French have ever made.
Here's the thing, if you make a movie in France, it's just a pervert movie. Doesn't matter what it is.
We've already talked about my beef with teenagers on this podcast. My beef with the French is something I'm going to have to get over. I
started this year. We're just kind of kicking it at the end of this episode. I started this year with 2 French films, actually. Mm-hmm. I watched Athena.
Yeah.
A bad movie. I think
I still got to watch the first 20 minutes of that movie.
No, the first 11 minutes.
Then I'll shut it off.
The first 11 minutes are incredible. But then I watched La Haine.
Oh,
which
yeah,
I'd
dude.
Before. I had never fucking seen it, but I watched Athena, and I was like, this feels exactly like La Haine. I should finally watch that. What a fucking movie. God damn.
I mean, he passed last year, but one of my...
Oh, really?
No, sorry, not him. Talking about Godard, Jean-Luc Godard, one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and I've seen most of his kind of beloved movies, and then have seen a lot of his late period stuff. Now, last period stuff, but I went and filled in a couple of the gaps I hadn't seen last year. But his last 3 movies now, which are Goodbye to Language, The Image Book, and Film Socialisme. Some of the weirdest, most experimental stuff anyone has ever done. God bless that man for just being a freak to the last minute. Goodbye to Language was a 3D movie where it's 2 side-by-side images that are just different things the entire time, and you're supposed to watch it in 3D, and the point of it is it's meant to just completely disorient you.
That's sick.
Very cool thing.
Did you ever get around to watching Vortex?
No, I've still got it on the old watch list.
I mean, that also does the 2 different things at the same time. Dude, that movie's so good. It was like my favorite movie last year, along with Jackass 4.
Argento's in it, right? He's one of the actors.
He's like the
lead
lead
actor,
in it. Yeah. Argento's in it. And it's by Gaspar.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Haneke last year too. Obviously not French, but films like Cachet, and I think I brought up The White Ribbon on an earlier episode.
Is Cachet's the one with the scene where the guy slits his throat?
Yep.
Like it's all building up to this confrontation. Oh my god, that scene. Okay, here's the thing. I don't know where I'd seen that scene because I've never seen that movie. But a couple of years ago, I spent like 2 hours just trying to find what that was from.
A YouTube video of like most twisted movie scenes of all time.
Yeah, all I
I'm not
knew
surprised
was
that you
what I
watched that.
Well, it's such a shocking image, and I spent like 2 hours Googling like everything I could remember until it finally popped up, and I was like, "Oh, it's the Funny Games guy."
The ending of that movie is so cool because it like does a twist ending in the most muted and understated way ever, where it sort of like reveals a thing as the end credits are playing only if you're paying attention to one section of the thing that's happening on screen. Very cool movie. That's my favorite Haneke movie by far.
We should watch though. I've only seen Funny
Games. Criterion I think it maybe just came out, but they did like 3 of his early movies. They just restored. I don't think Cachet was in there, but Haneke's a freak. He's a real one.
Yeah. Should we wrap it
Yeah.
up?
Thanks for listening, freaks. You're real ones.
Yeah.
What's up?
Let's get off this call so we can figure out what season 3 is.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
RIKI-OH, 21 years old, sentenced to serve 10 years for manslaughter and assault. The cells are divided into 4 wings: east, west, north, and south. Each wing is controlled by a leader. They're also known as the Gang of 4. None of you are worthy enough to see the warden yet.
So you think you're human beings? To me, you're lower than a fly.
RIKI-OH is extremely dangerous.
Why didn't you let the doctors take the 5 bullets out of you?
Souvenirs.
Where were you for those 2 years? Were you a trained killer? Tell me!
Today I reveal to you my secret. Will be the day you die.
I can hurt people without even touching them. Just what kind of a demon is he? You think you're real tough? I'm a lot tougher than you think. All right, you got a lot of guts, Oscar.
雖然監獄裏邊嘅手續就係監房裏邊最好功夫嘅人。
呢個我就喺度同你隻抽。